All right, what I'm going to show you today is what I think is one of the top 20 things you need to learn how to make from scratch, and this is called pie dough. So this is going to make a single crust pie, or in the case what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into a chocolate chip Rugelach cookie. So you're still learning the same concept of making the pie. And then another video I can actually share with you is actually how to form your pie dough into a shell, decorate it, and then you can make any pumpkin pie you'd like, say, for Thanksgiving. So we're going to start first by, I'm going to do a glass bowl, and all of my ingredients are really cold. So I have ice water, I've kept the butter and that vegetable shortening I've given you in the refrigerator so that they're nice and cold. So this is starting with 1.5 cups of flour. We want to put that in the bowl, and to that, you want to do what's called cutting in the fat. So the fat in this case is butter and equal parts of that vegetable shortening. So the reason why we use both is because, again, fats have different melting points. And what I'm doing, first of all, is I'm just going to cut these up into little smaller pieces so I can work with them. So the reason why we're using different fats, so butter, of course, and again, we use unsalted. If you use salted butter, you can cut back on the other salt that you add. The reason we're using two different fats is butter is flavor, so we want our dough to taste good. But the reason we're using the vegetable shortening is that because it has a really high melting point. In fact, vegetable shortening is what you would use if you wanted to deep fat fry something, so it doesn't burn at a high point. So what happens is when we cook the cookies at the 350, the vegetable shortening actually starts to help that flakiness and that crispiness. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking both of them and I'm kind of cutting it up and I'm adding them into the fat, but I am doing them in small pieces. And I'm going to show you a tool that's going to help you do this. Now, if you don't have that at home, you can use a normal just dinner fork. Okay, make sure you measure all the ingredients I give you. Don't assume that they are already measured out for you. Okay, I will tell you your butter will be measured, but your vegetable shortening may not be accurate. So you're going to want to make sure you measure that. Okay, so the tool I'm going to use, whoops, I forgot to add the salt, put that in there, is what's called a pastry blender. So it has these kind of little blades on it. They're not sharp. It is round, so it's the curve of the bowl. And what this does is you have the handle and you use it to cut the fat into the flour. Now, if you don't have this, you can use a dinner fork, and I can show you that. So what you're doing is you're pushing down on the fat, and it's kind of squeezing through. And you just continue and turn the bowl, okay, to do that until all of the fat, let me see if I can get you a little closer, down there, is almost where you just don't see it. So if you shake the bowl, the fat should come to the top. I still see I have big clumps of butter. So just continue until all the fat shortening is really small, tiny little pieces of dough pushed into that dough. Okay. Let me get rid of this, and I'm going to show you. I'm just going to get all the fat out of there. And if you had just a dinner fork, you just go in, and I just continue to like mash. Okay, just mix everything in, give it a little shake, you'll see, right? The fat comes up to the surface. And just continue to mash all of that in. I prefer you do it by hand, not with a food processor. Food processor is better if you're going to do a double crust. So do it a little bit more, stir it, shake it. Okay, all the fat kind of comes to the surface. You'll see little chunks, push it in again. So I would say you could stop doing this process when they're smaller than the size of frozen peas and corn, okay? And I'm going to show you why, because there's a point to where you want to be able to make sure you see all that fat. Okay, so I have a 1/4 cup of ice water. I put this in the fridge as well. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pour this in and start to stir my pie dough. And using my fork, I'm going to push. You're going to start to see the dough form. Start to push all of that dough together. Now you might need a little bit more water, just don't overdo it. And I'm going to show you how to check. So big pieces of dough start to form, wipe it off, and push it back together again. Okay, let me get just a little bit more water. About another tablespoon. So, if your dough is too dry, okay, this isn't going to come together like the pizza dough, okay, it's going to be much drier. But if it is too dry, add a little bit of water. You don't want to add, if it's too wet, you've overdone it. You don't want a wet dough. Okay, so I'm going to put this out on the counter just like you kind of did, but we're not going to knead, okay? We don't want to overwork the dough. This time you're just going to simply push it together and squeeze. And if you see it sticking, you're good. Okay, move it aside. Bring it in. If it can stick together, that's good, okay? Push it together. If it's sticking, push it off to the side, okay? Take the rest, take some, squeeze. If it's sticking, okay? Might be a little crumbly, okay? But if it's sticking, push it off to the side. See what I got left. Push it together. Might need just a tiny bit of water. Okay? See if I can just add a little bit of water. Push this all together. Okay? You can see that it's not consistent, right? It looks crumbly. It's not falling apart. I can kind of feel it's a little doughy. That's what you want. If you push down and you look at the dough right up close, okay, I actually can see little bits of butter and that shortening, and that's what you want. Okay, so don't overwork that dough. Okay, take this last little bit maybe that's on the table and just see if you can get it to go in. All right, now what I want you to do is I want you to form your dough into kind of a flat little disc. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, and then take it and cut it in half. Okay, so now you're going to have 2 pieces. They should be about equal weight. And form those now into a little ball. Okay, so just push them together. Don't knead. Okay, just kind of, I'm pushing and rolling in my hands. All right, then what I want you to do, I'm going to clean this off just a little bit. So you have 2 pieces of dough. You're going to take some plastic wrap. Okay, I'm going to lay one down. I'm going to put one ball in the middle, and I'm going to wrap it over and push down to flatten out that disc. Okay, so now it's like a hockey puck, flat and on the sides. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we actually need to refrigerate this dough for at least 30 minutes, okay? So look at this, I'm gonna take it off. So it's about 3/4 of an inch thick, but it's flat, okay? Rounded, because again, we're gonna have to roll to a circle. So we start out with a circle. Flatten it, wrap it really tight, okay, around the edges, and refrigerate. Let's do that to the second piece. Okay, so start it out into a ball. Okay, put it, whoops, into a ball, flatten it, and then wrap it really tight. Okay, refrigerate that for 30 minutes. Okay. So I brought out one piece of our pie dough, and we're gonna go ahead and move forward with making the cookies, and I'm gonna show you how to roll that in just a second. But let's go ahead and make sure we have everything else ready. So in a small bowl, I went ahead and added the brown sugar, which is a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And what you wanna do is go in there, make sure there's no lumps in your brown sugar. Mine was sitting out for just a little bit, so I want to break them up. And mix that together. And then you're also going to have 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to go ahead and microwave that just a little bit so it's softened. And then you have a 1/2 cup of mini chocolate chips. Now, the ingredients here is going to be enough to do both of those doughs. So make sure you're not adding everything to just the first one. It's enough for 2. And then I do have a little bit more flour because we are going to go through the rolling process on the dough. And then I have 1 egg and a pastry brush. Now if you don't have a pastry brush, that's okay. Just go ahead, and you can even use your finger. Honestly, you can even start to get yourself a little bit of equipment. The Dollar Tree has you can do little paintbrushes. Just make sure you write on the handle that it's for egg. You don't want to use the same one you maybe use for barbecue sauce because you don't want that flavor to come over into your pastry. They do make silicone or plastic ones, then that's good as well. All right, egg wash off to the side. That's for after we have them both rolled out. And I like to use on this one a pizza cutter. So if you have your pizza cutter from last week, pull it out again. All right, when we roll dough, we don't want to add any more flour to it that we have to. So again, lightly dust your surface, and then let's go ahead and unroll one. Now remember, we rolled it into a circle for a reason, okay? We want to complete a circle. So this is actually called a dowel. If you have a rolling pin, that's fine. Rolling pins have handles that have a single rod that goes through the middle and it rolls with it. This is just something I like. There also is French taper dowels. I like that as well. Lightly flour your rolling pin. You should never wash your rolling pins into or submerge them into water. They're wood and they are absorbent. So take your dough and you're going to go into the middle, and it's going to be a gentle, easy process. You're always going to go from the center up, the center down, okay, gently, and then spin it. Now if it's sticking, add a little bit more flour, okay? So just dust it, flip it. So it's a rolling up, rolling down, and spinning situation. Now if you happen to have parchment, you can roll on parchment, or if you have a pastry mat, you can do that as well. So again, I do a couple times. I'm always going out or around the clock, and I'm spinning the dough over, okay? So rolling one way, and I'm not adding a lot of pressure. You just want to do it gently. So if I go from, 9 to 3, then I go noon to 6, and then spin it and do it again. And what you want to do is always check after a couple rolls, lightly dust it again, flip it over so the top becomes the bottom, bottom becomes the top, and you continue to roll. And what we want to do is we want to roll it into about a 10-inch circle. Now, don't worry about if these little ends start to break apart. If your dough happens to get a split in it, just stop. You can add a little bit of water. Okay, it's going to start getting really delicate. So again, being very gentle with it. And what I happen to have is a mixing bowl that's 10 inches around, or if you have a cake plate or something like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check it, and I'm going to use it to see where I need to roll my dough out. If it's just this corner, then just gently work that edge right there, okay? But again, if you start with a nice round disc, you'll get a nice round circle, okay? Just go up and over. Now, if you could see this dough up close, I would be able to show you. It looks like marble. You can see streaks of the white, which is the shortening, streaks of some yellow, and which is going to be nice and flaky. Now, be careful. You don't ever want to push too hard on the ends. You don't want the dough thick and then going really thin. So I kind of always push a little harder and then ease off towards the outside. But when I'm saying pushing hard, it's very gentle. It's not pushing really super hard. All right, my dough is just over that 10-inch bowl. So I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to grab my knife. Only because I like my cookies to look really perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the tip of my knife all the way around my cutting bowl. Okay, and I'm going to remove this extra dough, and honestly you could roll it back into another ball and you can do it again, or add your little dough. It won't be as big. Alright, so there is your 10-inch circle. Okay, so what I want you to do now is, using your pizza cutter, okay, is I want you to cut this into 12 wedges, but leave it into that circle, okay? So very carefully, just kind of go halves, quarters, okay? And then each piece you're going to go into thirds. So if you can do it all the way across, or maybe you just kind of eyeball it and go up to the middle. I'm going to go all the way across. I'm going to do this third towards the middle, cut those 2 in half. Okay, so thirds again, right here to there, and then one more across. That gives me 12 cookies, because remember, this makes 24. All right, now let me go get the rest of my supplies out and I'll show you how to continue making the dough. Okay, so I think I have everything out and ready. I have my brown sugar mixture that's mixed up. I went ahead and also grabbed a tablespoon to kind of just make sure that I have enough sugar for both cookies. Little trick, if your brown sugar is still got those lumps in it and if they're really hard and they're not breaking up, you need to throw them out. But if you still have some big chunks in there, you can actually put it in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds and it will actually start to soften, and that's ready to go. So I also have another brush, and I have my butter, and that has been softened. You really don't want it melted, and that's going to go over the dough, and that's what's going to go on first. So about half of that butter, okay, and I'm going to go from the edges to the center, and I'm just going to spread that butter all the way around, and you want to go out to every edge and right down into the middle. And this kind of acts like your glue, and if we were going to do cinnamon rolls, we'd do the same process. So a little bit more. I have a little left over for the next one. Now I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of the sugar, and I'm going to sprinkle it edge to edge. until everything has got a nice little layer of that sugar. Let me see, one, I can do a little bit more. If I had to, I can make more. All right, then let's go with a 1/4 cup of those. I'm gonna remeasure. 1/4 cup of the mini chocolate chips, and the mini definitely works out better in this because when we try to roll it, the bigger the chocolate chip just doesn't roll into the cookie very well. So I'm gonna spread them out. I'm gonna bring them in and make sure they're all a little bit of a layer. Now, one of the things that it says on your recipe is walnuts are optional. So if you would like to, I would do a 1/4 cup of walnuts and chop them up really fine. I just put mine in a Ziploc bag and hit them with the rolling pin since it was out. And you want them really a little bit like the size of those mini chocolate chips because, again, we're going to roll it. So, all right, so spread those out. Now what you want to do is take it, your filling, and pat it gently into the cookie so that it doesn't go anywhere. Now, don't push too hard, but just give them a little tap in there. All right, let me move. I have preheated the oven, so it's at 350, and I have a parchment-lined half-sheet pan, okay? And I'm gonna put that right here, and let me spin this a little bit so you guys can see. All right, when you roll your cookie, you're starting from the outside, so this is one that's cut. I'm just gonna kind of lift it, and you roll, and as you roll, you're tucking all of those little ingredients in and all the way around, so you spiral, and then you're gonna put it on your tray. All right, and then if anything falls, I kind of try to tuck it into the next one. Whoops. Take that, put that point on the bottom so it doesn't come unrolled. All right, so again, you kind of lift and roll at the same time so you're not pushing the toppings down all the way to the middle. And then this point right here goes down on the cookie sheet so that it doesn't unroll. And again, take your filling, move it up to the next one. And you're going to do this entire process until you have all 12 or 24 really are done, because you should be able to. Let's see if we can get them all on one tray. You can always bake them twice. Let's do one more together. So again, rolling it, pushing it, laying it on the tray so that little point is down. Then take your filling, push it up onto the next one. All right, I'm going to show you after I have all 12 rolled. So I have all 12 rolled, and I have my other stuff ready to go. Now I want to do the wash. We talked about that in our yeast dough, right, to do a little wash. So I'm going to take a little bit of egg and water, and I'm just going to gently brush the tops of them. And what this is going to also do is going to allow me to even sprinkle a little bit more sugar on the tops of them. And then anything that maybe is falling off, I might go back and stick it in all these little chocolate chips and walnuts that are falling off the edges. Okay, so just give them all a little bit of a egg wash. This was going to make them look really nice and shiny as well. And they're going to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes, just until they're golden brown. Just keep an eye on them. You maybe want to check them at 15, spin them in the oven, remember, top to bottom, bottom to top. Okay, take all this little filling that's all falling off the sides, put it on the top, just because I don't want it to burn. Clean it up just a little bit. And then I have just a little extra white sugar. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch a little bit more white sugar See what you have at home onto the top of it. Don't do brown sugar. Brown sugar, remember, contains molasses, so it would be too wet and would burn. So it can be white sugar, the granulated sugar, or even if you have a little bit of raw sugar, you can do that. That's used a lot in the baking. Only takes maybe another teaspoon. All right, let's set a timer, and we're gonna go put these in the oven. So you can see I brought these out of the oven. They're really golden brown. I don't want to touch them. You kind of want to let them just sit a little bit. Let them come to room temperature before you eat them. Keep them in an airtight container and they'll be good for about a week. Honestly, if they last that long. Enjoy, you guys.